What do you want? Because you become conformed by that to which you aspire. You're shaped by your desires. And so at the end of the day, you become what your desires make you.
Welcome to the broadcast. This is Michael Easley in Context, and it's my privilege and delight and high expectation to have my friend Ken Boa, Dr. Boa, back on the broadcast. Ken is engaged in a ministry of relational evangelism and discipleship. He's a teacher, he's a writer, he's a speaker, and he's just an all-around brilliant guy. He's president of Reflection Ministries and the Trinity House Publishers. He holds a Bachelor of Science from Case Institute of Technology, a THM from Dallas, our Theological Seminary, a PhD from NYU, and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Oxford in England. He's the author of 50-plus books, including Life in the Presence of God, Conformed to His Image, An Unchanging Faith in a Changing World, Faith Has Its Reasons, on and on and on. Ken and his wife Karen live near Atlanta, Georgia. The newest book we're going to talk about today, I don't have a hard copy of it. It's called Recalibrating Your Life, Navigating Transitions with Purpose and Hope. But just for fun's sake, I want to show our friends. I read this book almost every single morning. There have been seasons when I've gone through it every day diligently. Ken also was kind enough to send me the handbook to Scripture. Are there 9 in this set, Ken? Is that right?
Actually, 9 handbooks altogether. Yeah.
9 handbooks.
That's quite a few. Yeah.
And then this book is a project that you could do with a small group or others. We've not talked about it on the podcast. We will one day. Conformed in His Image. It's kind of a compilation of all things Ken Boa, practically speaking. But the problem with Ken is I can't keep up. He also has a teaching ministry that's free. You can sign up for a monthly resource as well as a daily devotional. And as always, we'll have those links in the show notes. Or you can just put the name Ken Boa in your search engine and you can wear yourself out. He's got a bunch of sermons on YouTube, which I have been binging in recent weeks. And one of the resources I'll mention are his spiritual renewal cards. Neat little packet of cards, front and back, and you can put them in a little case. And if you do those daily, it'll change your life. It really will. Ken's done an extraordinary job. So, Ken, with that long, glowing introduction.
Glowing, yes.
Thanks for coming back on the podcast.
No, delightful to be back with you. And this is a critical topic for us to chat about. Indeed, the Recalibrate Your Life. There's so much content that I've tried to squeeze into that. When you're dealing with your perspective on what gives meaning to life and your purpose, what gives direction in your practice, how do I wisely invest my life? It's not just for people in retirement, and it's very important for them to hear that. It's never too soon to do it, but it's never too late to do it. But the sooner we do it, obviously, the better off we'll be, because we recalibrate earlier and we kind of get our mission in perspective.
You know, I often talk about decades and helping people think about your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, because there are some unique things in those decades, but you and I know they go by very quickly.
Yes.
And before you know it, you're going, wow, they're gone. And I'm in my 40s, my 50s, my 60s, my 70s. And so this is a great topic. And I'm so glad that you and Jenny put this together. Let me give folks an overview. You did it already, but let me give them a little bit more depth. Perspective, what gives meaning, purpose, what gives direction, practice, how do I invest my life? And under each one, you've got a very well-organized, no surprise, set of subsets, I might say. I want to start with the meaning of life, because from moving from Kant and others down to practicality, how many adults in your ministry, your relational capital over the years, have wondered about their meaning in life, Ken?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, it's one of the 4 fundamental questions that I use. And when I think about that, I use the questions of meaning, identity, purpose, and hope. And the question of meaning relates to where did I come from? And the question of who am I is the question related to identity, and why am I here, purpose, and where am I going is hope. And frankly, those are fundamental areas that are needful, because meaning it comes from where do I come from, and if is this just is it chance or a dance? Is it the eternal spirit, eternal tripersonal spirit who holds all things together, who spoke matter, energy, space, and energy into being at a finite time ago? Is that the ultimate basis? Because then we have a personal ultimate rather than some impersonal force or physicalism, which gives us no context for meaning. Then we're just an episode between two oblivions. You're just a little speck in time and you're gone.
I haven't thought of it that way, but I feel that way a lot.
We often do. Yeah. Actually, I have to be honest with you. I had a tough time this morning, and I was processing some things, and as life goes by quicker and quicker, we begin to realize we need more calibrations more frequently to. And I just made another one, and basically I put it this way: life is a tragedy in this fallen world, and it will only become a comedy in the resurrected world to come. It's so accept that it's a tragedy. Don't be surprised. We're on a conveyor belt that inexorably moves us with it's constant movement, but we can't discern it any more than we can quite see the clouds moving in the sky or the minutes moving by on the hour. But they are, and it's in a conveyor belt that inexorably moves all of its children to growing atrophy, stenosis, desiccation, and basically death. And it is a depressing thing to see.
I
And
feel better already. Thank you.
yeah, isn't that so?
I call those a cheery Michael Easley sermon when I do this.
That's exactly right. So unless we unless we had an outcome that's bigger than that, a larger context, um, it's a journey of refinement in a profoundly fallen world. But I feel like I'm on a kaleidoscopic roller coaster. But it's a God intentioned journey of refinement, and He's choosing to use. We well know this. He uses our pain, our sorrow, our sauce, our losses. So, in my mind, setbacks, sorrows, and sufferings teach us far more than success in
Well,
this
I've
fallen world.
maintained for decades that you don't learn anything apart from pain.
You
It's
don't.
just, it's horrible, but yeah.
It's
You mentioned a kaleidoscope and some other great metaphors. I was thinking you need some spiritual boning. You can give us some
yeah.
spiritual boning to navigate this. So my good friend Dave Gibson often says, Michael, I don't know if you need a dope slap or encouragement. And
Dope slap.
a dope slap, yes. And he
Yeah.
also loves the word recalibration. So he and I have been talking a lot about your book, because that is a lot of life. Is that things are going to happen, and back to your outline here. In this meaning, when bad things happen, injustices, disappointment, fallen creatures in a fallen context, when that stuff collides, and we get down in the dumps, depressed, discouraged, lonely, there's got to be a reset button. What do we do?
Yeah, and that's that reset button that I actually I find myself using it every day now, and it's going to be another one of the cards. By the way, we're adding another card, actually three cards to the spiritual renewal kit, and those cards relate to the three questions I asked throughout the course of the day. And the first question is, what do you seek? And the second question is, who do you say that I am? And the third question is, do you love me more than these? And I must tell you, Michael, that when I ask those three questions, I find that they profoundly enhance my journey. And in fact, I've now added something where I realize, that first question, what do you seek? Which is the first question that Jesus is recorded as having asked in his public ministry, relates to that larger prayer by St. Richard of Chichester in the 14th century. May I know you more clearly. And then, who do you say that I am? May I love you more dearly? Do you love me more than these? May I follow you more clearly? So I'm going to add that to as a card to this little set. And because you see, in doing that, that's my mini recalibration. I do it throughout the course of the day. And every time I say, because what's the most fundamental question you can ask? What do you want? Because you become conformed by that to which you aspire. You are shaped by your desires. And so at the end of the day, you become what your desires make you, and the heart always finds room for what it treasures. So the fundamental question is, what do I seek more than anything else, is the most fundamental question I can ask.
Now this is a rabbit trail, but
Yeah, I
I
like
love all
rabbit
this.
trails.
I connect with it. But Ken, we all compare ourselves.
Yeah.
We compare ourselves to others that are smarter than us, have more money than us, better looking than us, travel more than us, more grandchildren, better children.
We do. We do. And when I think about contentment, I'm showing you a thing. I don't know whether you use this or not, but I'm just throwing it for your purposes here. Yeah. So I've discovered that the spirit of secret of contentment, and this is really adapted from conform to His image, is either going to be self or it's going to be Christ. I got a choice. And if it's self, what mechanism do I use? Comparison, but comparison's a loser's game, and you know why? Because at the end of the day, if you compare upwards, you feel terrible. You feel bad, but downwards, and you feel arrogant, and both lose. And so at the end, it's not healthy, but it leads to covetousness, and it leads to deficiency mindset, which then leads to competition, unhealthy forms, and then to compromise. Whereas if Christ determines the content of my life, instead of comparing, I'm going to let the one who knows me and loves me determine what that content looks like, and He's made me competent. He's given me what I need. He hasn't given me my greeds, but He's given me my needs, and then that gives me compassion, and then character. What I love about that is that it works both on both sides of the coin, because at the end of the day, not only does it move away from on the vertical side when I think of it this way, but also the horizontal, because comparison versus contentment, covetousness versus competency, competition versus compassion, and compromise versus character. The differences couldn't be greater. And so at the end of the day, I'm looking at what, do you and I approach relationships out of the overflow of Christ in us? If we allow Him to define us, the world defines us by default, but the Word will only define us by discipline. If we allow Him to define us and not the world, then only then do I have a basis for security, significance, and satisfaction. But I have to choose to believe what He tells me about myself is true, in spite of my feelings and experiences to the contrary. And that takes a measure of trust and faith. But the more I choose to believe that's who I am, I approach relationships out of an overflow, out of sufficiency, rather than a deficiency in which I have to milk relationships to get my needs met.
We can stop right there. Let's have the collection. All right. You're right. Without God, recalibration is a dead end.
Dead end.
Exercise
Yeah,
of utility, boiling
it
down
is.
to self-improvement with
That's right.
no real hope or end or goal beyond this life. With Him, however, recalibration is more than a self-help technique. It's a distinctly Christian process that increases our focus and dependence on God. It leads to our becoming more conformed to the image of His Son and being people He can use to reproduce His life in others. I often talk about Romans 12, 1, 2, and 3. In fact, we recorded a number of programs earlier today, and I mentioned that at least twice, because the transformed renewing of our minds, not to think as we ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment as God has allotted to
Yes.
each. And that's
Yeah.
where I get encouragement, because I get around guys like you and I feel like I'm a peon in this game, but God's allowed to each one of us a measure
That's
of
right.
faith. And so expand on that. I love that opening paragraph in your introduction.
You're right. It boils down to self-improvement, because you have to have a telos, a goal, something that transcends this life. And so maintain or regain an eternal Christ-centered perspective and apply that perspective to every component of my life. And I was actually doing that this very day in a very real way, because of in light of some situations. As we get older, again, we find that life goes by quicker and quicker, and our perspective can be one of loss and a net loss, rather than the need to grasp. And this is the eternal perspective, that the things that are seen are temporal, that the things that are unseen are eternal. But it takes measure of risk. But faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the condition of the stuff of things that are not seen. It means that we're called to the assurance of things not seen. I've got to take the risk of putting my hope in that which is not seen over that which is seen, and not yet over now. So it does take a measure of risk to transfer my trust. So I have to constantly review and recalibrate on a kind of a daily basis. That's why I mentioned those three questions I now ask every day. It's a kind of a mini recalibration. Wait, now what do I seek right now? What do I long for more than anything else? And is it not to know you? Not just knowledge in the head, but experiential, personal knowledge. And then the question, who do you say I am? And my bigger vision of Him then causes me to love Him more than these. And then to love Him more know so that love him more dearly, and then follow him more nearly is, do you love me more than these? A choice is made, and I have to decide who gets to determine the direction of my life, and is it the world or the word? It's every day is a constant battle, and I don't know about you, but my experience of these days around as we hurtle around our sun at 66,000 miles per hour each year. We take a circuit, and each one is for me faster than the one before, and it seems to be accelerating. And I have a phrase: age. It's really it's a collusion. I tell you, it's a age conspires with God to transfer our trust from the temporal to the eternal. It's a conspiracy. And you can't get out of it. You can't start. You can't unage. I love it when you go to a party. You haven't seen someone in 5 years or 10 years. Oh, you look marvelous. No, you look terrible, and so do I. Let's be honest about it.
That was Jimmy Williams' line. He goes, you know you're older when people say you're looking good.
Yeah, yeah. When they're trying to encourage you.
George Sweeting said, "I feel like a young man with something really wrong." Um, this is under the section of purpose in life, and I'm jumping ahead, and forgive
That's
me
right.
for not knowing the precise page because my ebook. But you quote this guy Levitin, Successful Aging,
Yes.
and this is one of the call outs. When we feel rejected or unappreciated, our bodies react by releasing cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol is very useful if you need to invade the fight or flight response, but not so useful when you're dealing with long-term psychological challenges such as the loss of respect. In contrast, when we're actively engaged and excited about life, our levels of mood-enhancing hormones such as serotonin and dopamine increase. And I would add to that in my own study of neuroplasticity and neuroscience, this cortisol and dopamine and oxytocin, these are powerful chemistries that God designed the human brain to operate under. But that was a chilling paragraph to read for me, Ken, because I think so many of my peer, and again, I don't want to just talk to older
Sure.
people, but we settle into this without knowing, and we get into this, get off my lawn attitude, or I
Yeah.
don't care anymore, or
Yeah.
I'll say what I want because these young people don't understand anymore. That's not helpful.
Not at all. In fact, we're called to be. This is why I talk in the book. I don't know if I think I talk in this book. I forget where I say things about the second naivete. The first naivete is childishness.
Mm.
And Paul says, I've learned to put away childish things. But most adults never acquire the second naivete, which is childlikeness. And as a result, they become ossified and intractable. They become people who are inflexible
Stop talking about me. This is getting
This is
convicting.
getting painful. Yeah, he's gone off from preaching and started to meddle.
Long time before you began, but keep going.
But it just becomes something that goes against our desires. So we have to then adapt and choose the way of childlike wonder. And I define childlikeness these days as the incapacity of being bored, having a sense of wonder and awe in everything. And that's one of the reasons why I've created this Museum of Created Beauty, this Encountering Beauty app that is going to be available next month, of 288 journeys through the natural world and giving people an experience of awe, so that we all exposed to beauty, but very few people wonder about it. Of that few, even fewer are curious, and even fewer submit to the mystery. I can't even understand a flower, and I'm going to understand the mind of the maker. So we look at this world of wonder and beauty, but I love Psalm 92, and it talks about this very matter we're discussing. They shall still bear fruit in old age; they will be full of sap and very green. And so that, because our challenge in our older years, as you know, is a lack of teachability, where we suppose we can't learn anymore. And in my mind, a sense of childlike wonder makes us open, full of questions, curious, a sense of play. Why did we stop drawing? Why did we stop playing? Why did we stop doing things and reveling in the mysteries in which we're immersed? And most people have kind of reduced their world to a small arena rather than opening their world by using the natural world of wonder. Even though it's fallen, it's exquisite. on the micro, midi, and macrocosms, why not use that and become more increasingly aware of that and realize you're immersed in wonder and beauty and mystery, and to realize that you can't understand a thing about this created order, then how are you going to understand the mind of the maker? So I've called to trust him, not understand him.
I don't know if you could see them from Atlanta, but the Aurora Borealis, or so-called Northern Lights, is extraordinary display. And my son-in-law and daughter got some magnificent pictures. I had friends in Texas that got some magnificent views. And I was overhearing some people talking about, well, what are the Aurora Borealis? And I heard a newscaster mispronounce it. They didn't even know what it was.
They didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, that goes to your point, though. And I'm going to go back in age a little bit. Think about what you just said. If you're 20 years old receiving that, how would you talk to a 20 or 30 or 40-year-old young adult with what you just, because you and I resonate exactly what you said. I think grandchildren are the delightful part of this, because my three that are close by, it's exhausting, but the play, it's all about play.
It's all about play.
And they are completely, I tell Cindy, it's one reason grandchildren are phenomenal is they unconditionally love you. You're this old person that smells weird. They can't do all that they can do, but they unconditionally love you because you give them undivided attention.
Yes.
And vice versa. Yeah. And so it's this delightful relationship where you can't help but play and laugh.
That's right. So if you're open at all to that wonder, it brings you back into that childlike naivete and that wonderful second naivete of childish wonder and curiosity and expressions of those things, because that inveterable curiosity is, in my mind, a very healthy thing for us to be. Always open to new mysteries and understanding, so that instead of suffering from the worst disease that I know, worse than hardening of the arteries is hardening of the categories, where you become so ossified and rigid in your thinking that you become inflexible and brittle. And yet, if we're living in this way, Psalm 92, bearing fruit in old age, full of sap and very green, so that there's no limit as long as we have life and breath. We can continue to be honoring to God. And I think about the idea of what heaven's like more now than ever before, because it gives me pleasure to think about being at play in the fields of the Lord, endless creative activity without frustration, to the glory of God.
All right, Ken, I want to go ahead in your book under it's chapter 7 in your book, but you have this 3 dimensions of purpose chart. And there's 3 rings, and I'll read them and you can expand on them.
Sure.
The larger outer circle is God's ultimate purpose. So for those of you that can't see this, envision a target. That's the outer ring. The second middle one represents God's universal purpose for all followers of Christ. And the third center circle represents the unique purpose for which God has called each individual to himself. And I love these kind of things because it puts it in a simple perspective. There you go. Here I'm talking and Ken's got the chart up. So to talk about how we think of this, especially, the ultimate purpose, obviously, we know that, right?
Yeah.
But it's that middle one, how do I know this, Ken?
Although the ultimate purpose, we don't know it. We don't know why did he make all things.
Well, but it's sort of ultimate, so we don't worry about it.
Okay.
So
we know this
about that one.
We know that God wasn't bored, and he wasn't lonely, because he's a unity and diversity. He is a community of being. And so in that relationship, there's perfect communion and love and communication, other-centeredness and service. And so he's the ultimate foundation for unity and diversity, but also for equality and authority, both. So that in that divine ultimate purpose, then why then would he make anything other than himself? So the book 1 is God plus nothing. Book number 2 is God plus the unit plus you. And so he speaks us, because we're the peak pinnacle of his created order. Why did he make a second book? Why did he choose to flow in out of the overflow of his plenitude, for him to then overflow that into created beings? And so he creates the angels, but it's the ones who bear his full image as being human. And this is why I like to put it this way. It's not in this book, I don't think, but I say now that the 4 words of God, the infinite word of God, which is the one who spoke matter and energy and space and time into being, the infinite word became the incarnate word. And the inspired word reveals this. It became the incarnate word so that he could become the indwelling word. So the astonishing concept that he would have a purpose in getting pleasure out of and relating his joy somehow to beings that are other than himself, but who then enter into a unity and diversity that's expressive of the very divine Trinity, and that he's going to demonstrate to the entire cosmos, to the angels and to men, that he is who he is by taking people who were formerly at rebellion against him and dead to sin, and now dead in sin, and now alive in him because of what he has done, that he is who he claims to be. It's an amazing concept. But he wasn't bored or lonely, but why he called it into being is a deep mystery. But we can go into more into universal purpose. And the universal purpose is, I call it, is E squared, evangelism and edification. To become like Christ, which is edification, and to reproduce his life and the life of others. And that's why I mean by abiding in Christ. So as I abide in, I talk about trust the Father, abide in the Son, walk by the Spirit. Because as I abide in Christ, now I'm drawing my vitality. A branch can't create life, but it can receive life. And it can take that received life and be a conduit of that life. But at the end of the branch is fruit that the branch doesn't need for its own nature, but it's the overflow of life. It's excess life, and it leads to the nourishing of others, which is edification, and the reproduction, which is evangelism.
Why is it we get off on so many tangents? I mean, I was, again, earlier today talking about the mandates of Christ to make disciples of all ethnos, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I'll be with you always. This is the Great Commission, the Great Commandment.
Yes.
It's so simple. It's so clear. An uneducated, laborer can understand it in the first century, and a person with 4 PhDs can understand it. But we veer in so many other areas.
It amazes me that this is the one command we have, as we know that the essential command was simple. It was go. And the whole idea of going was really a participle that modifies the one command, make disciples as you go, and then baptizing and then teaching. So that all three, there's only one command, and I call that teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. So I call the Great Commission then the creation of obedience-based disciples who reproduce his life in the lives of others. And that's the hardest thing for organizations to fund, true discipleship building, because you can't quantify the fruit. You see,
that's why pastors build libraries in churches, because they have something tangible to see. And we got it backwards, right? He said, make disciples, and I'll build my church, and we're building structures and hoping someone else will make the disciples.
Make the disciples. I think that's exactly right. So it becomes a crazy. And as you know, Dallas Willard says it's always the case that we use the metrics of this world. So ABCs, attendance, buildings, and cash.
Oh yeah,
but you cannot quantify a four-soil disciple. I talk about the soils, that, and that.
You do a great job on that.
Yeah, and I can't quantify the 30, 60, and 100-fold, or you could make it. You can't. Yeah, but that fourth soil is faithful, high degree, but it's faithfulness to opportunity. It's not how much we've been given, but what we do with what we were given. But the net of the day, a reproducing disciple is one who obedience-based discipleship. And that's what's often neglected and overlooked in the case, as you say, for building entities and that are quantifiable. But I can't measure the fruit. I'm committed to a measure of ambiguity when I'm doing that.
Okay, and unfortunately our time's running away from us, and I want to talk principally about stewardship.
Okay.
And I think you can do this one without the page. This is called 3 Characteristics of Godly Stewards.
Sure.
And so let me just ask you to speak in terms again, keeping in mind some younger mindsets, because I fear as I get older, I fixate on my future, my purpose, my calling, but I also want to encourage the younger men and women that you have a stewardship even now when you're busy and you're building income and you don't have enough and you fear the future and you fear for your children. You're still a steward.
Exactly so. You are. And the typical areas of stewardship, as you know, are time, talent, and treasure. But as you know, I add two more. I add truth and relationships. And my argument from Luke 16:9 is to make so that therefore to take those things that are passing away. So the so make use for yourself the things of this world that are passing away, and use it to make friends in the next world. So if I leverage my time, my talent, and my treasure, which is a stewardship area, but I'm also given the leverage of truth and relationships. In my mind, those are the two things that are going to last forever. God's word rather, it'll endure, and you've never met a mere mortal. So if I take those things which are passing away, my time, talent, and treasure, and invest them into truth, makes friends for yourself by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, that's when you die, they'll be there to receive you into the eternal dwellings. That means that I can leverage the temporal for the eternal. That's just a life well lived. To take those things which are passing away and to transmute it into the gold of that which is going to endure forever. That's the alchemy of grace.
Okay, last question. You're talking to you and me and folks in their late 60s, 70s, early 80s. Give them some encouragement about their stewardship, their purpose. What do they need to recalibrate? I mean, goodness, the runway's short when we get to this age.
It is short. Becoming increasingly obvious for me. You hear that phrase. That there's something over the hill. The grave's on the other side of the hill. But as a friend of mine put it, he's so old now he can see the thing. So he can see, he's over the hill. He can see the grave. But in my mind, though, again, it's that conspiracy that transfers my object, my trust, and so that while I have time and opportunity. No, but even if my resources have diminished, yet I can still be a steward who uses it well. It's because in my mind, it's based upon faithfulness to opportunity. That's the divine equalizer that all of us can actually participate in the purposes of God. It's not how much time you've been granted, how much ability you've received, or how much of this world's wealth that you have, as you know, but it's what you do with what I gave you. So that a person who lives a very short life, let's say in a poor country like Sierra Leone, and he has a short life, impoverished and not much by way of talent. Yet that person, if he uses them well, can be rewarded at the judgment seat of Christ as much as a great saint. So that's the divine equalizer. So to my mind, steward, because it's required of a steward that we will be held accountable. What did you do with it? What did you do?
My mind runs to two thoughts: the end of Saving Private Ryan, or Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. I could have done more.
Yeah, the plague of what if, and I could have done more.
Yeah,
as well as Psalm 90, which, as you well know, the oldest psalm in the Psalter by Moses.
I love
and
that
twice he says, the meaning. Show me the meaning of my hands.
Yes.
Which echoes both those movies. What did I do?
Yes. Or is it? Confirm the work of my hands. Is there anything I can do that's not going to be lost in the sea of eternity? And the answer is yes. That which is done in the power of the Spirit, as Christ lived in you. So that's why I use these three things: to trust the Father, abide in the Son, walk by the Spirit. Because insofar as I walk in trusting the Father, not understanding Him, but trusting Him, abiding in His Son, and walking in the power of His Spirit, keeping in step. Insofar as I'm doing that, I'm accomplishing something that cannot be measured or quantified, but it will endure forever because it leads to lasting fruit. So that to me is the great thing. Because we all want to ask, is there anything that's going to last? Because the measure of the significance of the thing is how long will it last? And if it's an episode between two oblivions, it doesn't mean a thing.
Well, this episode has been Between Two Oblivions with Mike Easley in Context and Ken Boa in the middle. Ken's newest book, Recalibrating Your Life, with contributing author Jenny Abel. You need to pick it up. As always, you can find information about our incredible guests in the show notes. And I encourage you to take a look at some of Ken's materials. There's a plethora of good stuff on his website for free. You can pick up the book anywhere electronically, or if you want to purchase it on his site, they'll send you a copy. And Ken, it's always a privilege to have you. Thank you, and look forward to the next time you'll join the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.